I had passed by that sign, I don't know how many times I'd passed by that sign, but I refused to stop. I refused to stop. Kelly and I and the kids, we'll make lots of trips down to the valley. Her parents live in McAllen. And so we always pass through Alice. And there's this one orange W that we pass by every time. And I refused to go in. You see, I grew up in Silsbee. Y'all know that. This is probably the last Silsbee story you'll have to hear. But in Silsbee, we became cosmopolitan when the Golden Arches showed up. And that's about as far as we went. And so I'd been raised on McDonald's, right? And so I refused to try this Whataburger thing that Kelly kept talking about until one day I relented. I saw the sign there, and I said, all right, we're going to go see what's inside. And so the moment I picked up that sweet bun with the delectable burger inside and the creamy cheese and the perfect mixture of pickles and onions and lettuce, I was hooked. That sign had pointed me in the perfect direction to that Whataburger, of which now I consume at least one a week, #1 combo with cheese. I've now switched over to jalapenos, which might be the reason for my heartburn. Jesus today in the Gospel of John is talking about signs as well. He's talking about bread. The Gospel of John is also called the Book of Signs because in it, Jesus identifies himself in several ways. He says, I am the vine, I am the gate, I am the resurrection and the life, I am the vine, I am the bread of life that we hear today. And each one of those is trying to point to a specific aspect of who God is, who He is, what His nature is like. Today in John's Gospel it said the only work that you have to do is believe in the one that was sent. And so these 7 signs point us to the one who was sent, what the character of God looks like, and it always looks like love. Today we have this recalling of the Exodus event that took place. These last couple of weeks we're always talking about bread because man's a hungry being and food's kind of important. But today we're talking about the time when the Israelites, they were running around out in the desert after they left their captivity in Egypt, and they started complaining, just like we all do. I'm hungry, God. Why have you brought us out here to die? I'm hungry. And God says, okay, I'll give you some bread. And then the manna is on the ground every morning. They go out and they pick it up and they eat it. And then they start complaining, but God, we don't have any meat to eat. And so God sends them doves. In the same way, they're taken away each morning because God's trying to tell them, depend on me alone. Depend on me and trust in me. And now they've got this Jesus guy. They've just seen the feeding of the 5,000 where he's taken just a couple of fish and barley loaves and he's changed them into thousands and thousands, so much that there's even some left over that they have to rebox up. And so Jesus leaves before they wake up and they say, oh my gosh, where's the bread machine? We got to go find the bread machine. We got to go get some fast food. And so they go over to Capernaum, Jesus' adopted hometown, and they find him there, and he says, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. You're just here for the grub. You just want to be on the Jesus welfare program or something, now, whatever it is. And so he's telling them, he says, no, that's a sign. That was a sign pointing to something much deeper, pointing to something much deeper. And that sign was pointing, just like that big W pointed to that delicious hamburger, the bread of life that comes down from heaven is a sign that Jesus is with us. Jesus is not going to depart from us. Things happened of old that were signs. Jesus shows them a sign in the feeding of the 5,000. They don't receive it. What signs are we missing every day? Are we missing some flashbulb moments in our lives as we go through life that maybe we could have dedicated ourselves to a little bit more, that maybe we could have been bread for someone else a little bit more? Sometimes I'll walk into our living room and all over the couch will be these Cheerios, and maybe underneath the pillow there's going to be a half-melted piece of chocolate, and the floor will be covered in gumballs, and it looks like something from Home Alone, right? And I'll tell the kids, I'll say, we need to take better care of our house, and we probably should find something healthier to eat. That's what God's telling us too. Find something healthy to feast on. Because the heavenly banquet is going on right now. As we come to this altar rail, we're surrounded by angels and archangels and all the company of heaven who sit at the banqueting table of our God, of which this is a sign. And they rejoice. And they call each one of us, believe in the one that was sent. Put your trust in Him, not just for one day, but for the rest of your lives, until you join that heavenly chorus as well. Growing up in Silsbee, one more Silsbee story. Growing up in Silsbee, in a small town, the first Sunday potluck is always a big affair. It's always so exciting. The women get out there and they bake all these pies, make all these casseroles, spaghetti, and the kids are just waiting and waiting and waiting for church to get out so that we can run in there and see what's on the spread. And so while we're sitting there salivating, looking at the spaghetti and the macaroni and the pot roast or whatever that they brought that day, the blueberry pies, apple pies, cakes, we're sitting there salivating, but the only problem is we got to wait for the parents to show up and have the prayer. And the prayer kind of rotated around, but everybody, all the kids anyway, were really distressed whenever Mac got to say the prayer. Because Mac was a long-winded prayer. He would pray for the church, he would pray for the pastor, he would pray for the children, he would pray for anybody that was sick in the hospitals, and he would go on and on and on. I think one time he even prayed for this guy's gout. And but you know what that told me? Even though in my little 5 or 6 year old mind I couldn't wait to dig into that fast food, that I was really receiving the bread of life from Mac. Because he had such a care for his people. He had such a love for those that God had called to be around him. That's what God calls us into as well. To love the one that He was sent, and if we truly fill ourselves with that life-giving bread, that sweet-smelling loaf of Jesus in our hearts, there's no way we can't love our neighbor as well. Today's my last Sunday, and I want to let y'all know that y'all have been bread for our family. Since the day one that we showed up, we have been fed. I appreciate that. Words can't describe that. All that I can say is thank you. This is the church my kids grew up in. They understand church because of all y'all. And I thank you for that. So keep being bread. Keep being bread for a broken world. My last question for you, my last question is, are you hungry? Amen.